As the sun began to set over the great wizarding city, Madi made her way through the bustling streets towards the prestigious Academy of Magic. She had received a letter summoning her to the office of Professor Ahmed, a friendly and brilliant wizard who taught advanced courses in defense against the dark arts. As she entered the ornate building and climbed the spiraling staircase to the professor's office, Madi felt a sense of anticipation and nervousness. She had heard that Professor Ahmed was notoriously difficult to impress, and she hoped that she had prepared enough to meet his high standards. When she reached the door to his office, Madi took a deep breath and knocked.
"Enter,"
said a squeaky voice from within. Madi pushed open the door and stepped into the dimly lit room. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with figurines and ancient artifacts, and the air was thick with the smell of old hot dogs and scented candles, dragon pussy specifically. In the center of the room sat Professor Ahmed, a short and imposing figure with piercing brown eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. He looked up from the scroll he was reading and regarded Madi with a cool detachment.
"Ah, Miss Madi,"
he said in a crisp, businesslike kind tone.
"I trust you have come prepared for our lesson today?"
Madi nodded and stepped forward, pulling out her wand.
"Yes, sir.
She replied, holding her wand steady.
I have been studying protection spells against the dark arts, as you instructed."
The professor took a step forward, intrigued.
"Interesting choice,"
he said.
"And what spell do you intend to demonstrate?"
"Protego,"
Madi said, and raised her wand, focusing her energy on creating a protective sphere around herself. As she concentrated, the air around her began to shimmer and twist, and a sphere of blue light appeared around her, crackling with magical energy. Professor Ahmed watched intently, his expression inscrutable. When Madi had finished, he circled around her, examining the shield from all angles.
He
muttered.
"Your technique is quite impressive, Madi, but I do have one suggestion. Keep your hunched-back gaming posture to your league gaming sessions instead, and open up a bit wider and raise your wand slightly higher, like so."
Madi tried to follow Professor Ahmed's advice, adjusting the placement of her wand and following the same motion.
"Like so?"
Professor Ahmed watched with a keen eye, nodding his approval.
"Exactly just like that, Madi,"
he said.
"The shield will be strong and well-formed, but I am curious, can you sustain it for a longer duration?"
Madi felt a twinge of anxiety, but she squared her shoulders and focused on maintaining the shield for as long as she could.
"Protego."
As she did so, the sphere pulsed with a brighter light blue light and expanded slightly, proving that she could indeed sustain it. The professor watched in silence for a few more moments before stepping back, his face betraying a hint of admiration.
"Very good, Madi. Your spell work is impeccable,"
he said, his voice tinged with pride.
"You have exceeded my expectations today."
Madi felt a surge of relief and gratitude.
"Thank you, sir,"
she said, bowing deeply.
"I will continue to practice and improve my technique."
As Madi was gathering her things to leave, Professor Ahmed spoke up.
"Madi, I wanted to remind you that the final test for next year is coming up soon. Make sure to keep practicing and refining your spells, especially those for defensive magic."
Madi nodded, grateful for the reminder.
"Thank you, Professor. I will make sure to keep practicing."
"Is there anything else you need help with before the test?"
Professor Ahmed asked, his tone friendly. Madi hesitated for a moment before deciding to mention the family book.
"Actually, I have a family book with magic unique to my family. I was wondering if you could help me understand it better."
"A family book, you say?"
he said, raising an eyebrow.
"I see. Well, I do have my hands full with end-of-year tasks, but I'd be happy to help you once I have some free time. Family-specific books can range from simple charms to powerful magic that are not always safe. I suggest you be careful with it and not delve too deeply until we have a chance to look at it together."
Madi nodded, feeling a slight glow of concern.
"Of course, Professor. I'll be careful."
The professor gave her a small smile.
"Good. And if you find anything new or unusual in the book, don't hesitate to come to me. I'll be happy to help you."
With that, he wished her luck in her studies and advised her to get some rest before the final test for the year. As Madi made her way to the library, she couldn't shake the feeling of excitement. She knew that she had a lot to learn, but with the help of Professor Ahmed and her family book, she felt that she was on the right path. Madi sat down with her family book. She felt a sense of familiarity and comfort wash over her. This book had been in her family for generations, and it contained magic to their bloodline. As she turned the pages, she took in the spells, incantations, and runes with reverence and awe. But as she reached around the end of the book, her heart skipped a beat. Maddie has been studying her family book for years and would know it almost like the back of her hand. But there it was, a new page, a map. The lines and symbols were unfamiliar, but Maddie's intuition told her that this was no ordinary map. She felt a pull, an almost magnetic force drawing her attention to it. Excitement and curiosity bubbled up inside her, but at the same time she felt a slight worry and cautiousness. She had never seen this map before, and the fact that it had appeared seemingly out of nowhere made her uneasy. Was it a treasure, a test, or a trap? Maddie knew that she should proceed with caution. She couldn't help but think about the mysterious new page she had discovered in her family book. It was a map, and as far as she could tell, it led deep into the Forbidden Forest. Maddie had always been intrigued by the Forbidden Forest and the dark secrets it held. She was tempted to go explore the map right away, but she knew that it was a dangerous and forbidden place. She wondered if she should wait and ask Professor Ahmed for help, but she also knew that he was about to be extremely busy with end-of-year tasks. In the end, Maddie decided not to disturb her professor and to just have a quick look. She knew that this was an opportunity that she couldn't pass up. However, she knew that she couldn't just waltz into the forest. It was forbidden to students. Maddie decided to wait until sundown when it would be easier to sneak out unnoticed. As the sun started to set, Maddie made her way through the academy's empty hallways, her heart pounding with excitement. She grabbed her wand, a cloak, and a small bag of supplies and set off towards the forest. The journey was treacherous. Maddie had to avoid the town that was situated between the school and the forest. Despite the late hour, the town was still buzzing with activity, and she had to be careful to avoid being spotted. She took a roundabout route, staying in the shadows and using her wand to create small illusions to distract anyone who might have been watching. Finally, she reached the edge of the forest. The trees loomed high above her, casting long shadows across the ground. Maddie wrapped her cloak tightly around herself and stepped forward into the darkness. As Maddie went on, she felt the magic around her growing stronger and more vibrant. But at the same time as she kept walking deeper into the forest, Maddie felt a sense of trepidation wash over her. The forest was dangerous. As Maddie pushed further into the thick underbrush, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her every move. The twisted, gnarled trees seemed to reach out with their branches like bony fingers, grasping at her as she walked past. The dense canopy overhead blocked out much of the moonlight, casting deep shadows across the forest floor that seemed to shift and writhe like living things. The forest was home to creatures that most people would never dream of encountering. Dangerous beasts with sharp teeth and poisonous fangs that could kill a person with ease. Maddie knew that she was taking a huge risk by venturing so deep into the forest alone, and every step she took filled her with a growing sense of dread. But she pressed on, the map in her pocket leading the way. After a while, she found herself in a small clearing, the ground soft beneath her feet. The treasure she had been searching for was nowhere to be seen, but she sensed that she was close. As Maddie continued, the eerie sensation became more blunt and obvious. But despite her unease, Maddie couldn't shake the feeling that something magical was calling out to her, drawing her ever closer. Maddie finally reached to where the map pointed her towards, and suddenly the map in her book suddenly flew out and landed on the ground. The magical force unleashed by the map caused the ground to shift and turn to reveal a glowing stone. As Maddie approached the glowing stone, she could feel her heart racing with excitement and anticipation. The closer she got, the more vibrant the light seemed to pulse, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. But despite her excitement, she knew she couldn't stay in the Forbidden Forest any longer than necessary. With shaking hands, she quickly reached out and touched the stone, feeling the warmth of its otherworldly energy. But a split second later, the light vanished into her, and the stone went dull. Notably, she didn't feel any different. The stone seemed to be a part of her now, but in a way that was hard to explain. Quickly pocketing the dull stone, Maddie turned to leave. But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. The silence of the forest only added to her unease, and she couldn't help but wonder to herself that it was strange how few creatures she had encountered, considering the reputation of the Forbidden Forest. It was almost as if they were avoiding her. Maddie quickened her pace, eager to leave the forest behind her. As she neared the edge of the forest, she suddenly heard the sharp incantation of a spell and felt a force knock her backwards. She stumbled and fell, her wand flying out of her hand and landing several feet away. She looked up, heart pounding, and saw a figure emerge from the hazy shadows. It was a man dressed in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. But what stood out to Madi was how the nose somehow was still not covered by the hood, deformed like a gnarled stump, flowing dark haze slowly seeping out of him. This was no ordinary wizard. As Madi struggled looking around for her wand, she saw the dark figure approaching her, his wand pointed straight at her chest.
Who are you?
She asked, trying to buy some time. Slightly dazed from the impact of the Expelliarmus spell, the tall, dark figure steps forward, his dark clothes billowing around him. He smirks and asks,
"Why would a little girl wander into the forbidden forest all alone during this late hour?"
Madi struggles and tries to sit up, keeping her eyes fixed on his nose as he walks around her, his nose glinting in the moonlight. He kicks her wand even further away, and she curses silently under her breath.
Benchode.
"If you give me whatever you found,"
the man continues,
"I might let you live."
Madi stares at him, defiance in her eyes, gripping the dull stone in her pocket tightly.
I'm not giving anything to you.
The man laughed coldly.
Ha ha ha. You don't have a choice. Give it to me now, or I'll kill you where you stand.
Madi could see the malice in his eyes and nose, and she realized that this was no ordinary dark wizard. As he stepped closer, she looked at his nose more closely, and it suddenly hit her. The man is of Jewish descent.
Hayes,
she whispered, her voice shaking. Madi could feel her heart racing. Hayes was one of the highest-ranking dark wizards in Bakit's army, and she knew that she was in grave danger. But she refused to back down. Madi's heart raced as she looked into Hayes's dark NPC eyes. She swallowed hard, trying to muster up the courage to speak.
You don't scare me,
she said, her voice quivering slightly.
I won't give you it.
Hayes's face remained impassive.
Last chance,
he said, his wand still aimed at Madi. Without another word, Madi spun on her heel and ran towards her wand, which was lying a few feet away. She could feel Hayes's spell whizzing past her ear, but she didn't stop running. Just as she was about to get hit by the curse, she heard a voice.
Protego Maxima!
Instantly, a shimmering mighty white protective sphere without a hint of blue appeared around Madi, blocking Hayes's curse. She turned to see Professor Ahmed standing a few feet away, his wand raised with a determined look on his face. As Professor Ahmed cast the protection of the dark arts spell, Madi could feel the raw power of her professor. She had never felt anything like it before. It was as if she had been standing in the middle of a hurricane, with the wind and force of the spell buffeting her. She was momentarily overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the magic, and she stumbled backward slightly. As she regained her footing and looked up, she saw the protection that Professor Ahmed had cast around her. It was a beautiful, large, shining white gold barrier that surrounded her completely. There was not even a hint of blue. A pure white and gold, and Madi knew that this was the mark of a powerful wizard. She could feel the strength and solidity of the shield, and it was as if she was encased in a protective wind bubble. She felt a surge of gratitude towards the professor, and she knew that she would have to thank him properly once she was safe. She was awestruck as she watched the magical shield form. Its brilliance was so mesmerizing that for a moment she forgot all about the danger she was in. The shield seemed to emanate an aura of safety and comfort, and she knew that no harm could come to her as long as it was there to protect her. Madi looked over to Hayes, who had a surprised expression on his face. He had clearly not expected anyone to interfere in his attack, especially Professor Ahmed, the Storm's Fury. Madi realized that she had just been saved by Professor Ahmed, one of the most powerful wizards she had ever encountered. She has never been so grateful to see anyone in her life. For now, she focused on the task at hand, grabbing her wand from the ground and preparing for the fight that was to come. As the curse hit the shield, it was deflected and dispersed harmlessly into the air. Madi was ready to counterattack, but as soon as she raised her wand, she could only see wisps of flowing mist left and Hayes fleeing at an incredible speed. Overconfident and out of pure reaction, she stepped forward, ready to chase him, but was quickly stopped by Professor Ahmed, who grabbed her arm.
Stop, Madi,
he said firmly, scolding her.
Do I need to remind you where you are? This is the Forbidden Forest, and it's a dangerous place. Who knows what kind of trap he has set for us.
Maudie felt embarrassed for her recklessness and for being caught in the forbidden forest. But Professor Ahmed surprised her by speaking in a gentle tone.
I know you're brave, Maddie, but you must also be cautious. Let's head back to school as soon as possible.
Feeling relieved and grateful for her professor's protection, Maddie followed him back to the school. She couldn't help but glance back at the forbidden forest and wonder what other dangers lurked in its shadows.